guys, so now I've arrived in Semarang. This is the Semarang Tawang station, train station in the city. That's the trains over there. And today we're going to, and over the next few days, we're going to talk about the history of, maybe you can say the history of Java, or at least the history of the Javanese. So let's go in this room. So this seems to be a waiting area. So actually, according to someone, the Tawang station was actually built during the Dutch period. And you can see it's a bit like classical in a way when it comes to the architecture. And over up there, there's like this quite cool hole which goes up and some windows. I think this is like the lounge or waiting area. And then see you in the next part or the next clip where I'm somewhere else. Oh yeah, hey guys, so now it's time for the second clip. This is not in Semarang anymore. We ate some food in Semarang, and then we went to Ambarawa in this place called Eling, yeah, which is like a sightseeing spot in near Ambarawa. It is like a 1.5 hour ride from Semarang, from central Semarang. So here you can see the lake over there and some mountains over there. I'm pretty sure Ambarawa is over there. So this video will be about the history of Java, but that's not separated from the geography of Java, which actually is kind of fitting for this background here, which is a lake and some mountains over there. It's a bit foggy though. So Java is the largest island in the world by population, but far from the largest island in the world by size. It's still quite big, around the size of Louisiana. That's what I know. But compared to islands like Honshu, it's much denser. Honshu is the main island in Japan, by the way, and it's much more tight. Yeah, basically. Why is there so much people in Java? There's by the way 160 million people living in the island. That's actually partly due to these things over here. Well, I don't know if those are volcanoes, but they might be, and there might be also dormant volcanoes, which is volcanoes which no longer erupt. It's basically like dead volcanoes. So these volcanoes make the nearby territory area fertile for agriculture, and also are a source of water. So this makes the nearby area good for farming and stuff, which starts to make cities and in general starts to bring a lot of people to Java, or at least a lot of people are born in Java because they have a lot of food to sustain a large population. So because of that, cities and farms are created. Yeah. So Java doesn't have that much major rivers. Of course, it's an island, so there's not that much rivers like Japan. Honshu, Great Britain doesn't have too much rivers also. Actually Great Britain has quite a lot. For example, the Thames River. The Thames, I don't know. There's like, for example, in Jakarta, there's like the Ciliwung River. But that's not very big, and there's a lot of like small rivers in Jakarta. Also talking about Java's geography. Java is a tropical island, so it's quite hot. But in here, places like this, near the mountains, it is still quite cool. So this is quite nice right now. Yeah. So that's a introduction on the geography of Java. See you in the next video about the early history and maybe the arrival of humans. Thank you for watching. Oh, yeah. So now it's time for the third clip. The last time, which is yesterday, I talked about the geography of Java in Eling. Now I'm in Cilancur, I think. What? Cilancur. And then you can see the hills over there, and there's a town, and then there's the vegetable farms. There's actually a mountain over here, which is pretty cool, but the top of the mountain is being covered by clouds. Yeah. So now I'm going to talk about the early history of Java and the arrival of humans in Java until around 500 AD or CE. Okay. So the Austronesian people came to Java and the rest of Indonesia and the rest of the whole area actually from what might be Taiwan. So they migrated south through the Philippines or through the Malay archipelago before reaching Java. So the Austronesian people is very quite diverse and includes people like the Javanese, Sundanese, Batak, Dayak, all of them basically, and that's just in Indonesia. But there's also the other people like the Malay, let me think, Malay, Filipino, and then the people in Polynesia and Micronesia and New Zealand or something. Yeah. So they left Java for about maybe like 4,000 years ago, and they began to build farms and towns in the island. As I said, the island of Java is very good for agriculture and because of the rainfall and volcanic activity, so it makes it fertile. So basically, they began to grow kingdoms and cities. Now, before we talk about the next part of the history of Java, I'd like to clarify that the island of Java is also not it's also pretty diverse, and there are a few ethnic groups which live in this island. So we're gonna mostly cover the Javanese, which are the largest group of people in Java, and that's around 100 million people, and they live mostly in Central Java and East Java. But there's also people like the Sundanese, Betawi, Baduy. There's the Maduris, but the Maduris live in Madura, which is a different island, which is off the coast of Java. And now we're going to talk about the very early history of human activity in the island. So according to Javanese legend, the first king in Java was Aji Saka, who apparently expelled demons, established literacy, and made a kingdom basically. And soon kingdoms were developed like the Eling and Mataram. We're going to talk about like the bigger kingdoms like the Mataram and the Majapahit in the next clip. Thank you for watching. So you guys know I'm in Nepal from Java. This is near, it's kind of near Magelang, and this is like basically like a colorful village near a hill. So today now in this clip I'm going to talk about the early kingdoms of Java. Yeah, we're gonna do the kingdom spirit in two clips. So basically, the first major kingdoms in the island were the Taruma and the Eling. The Taruma was in the west of Java and produced some of the first writings of Java, and the Eling was a bit closer to here and sent diplomats to China. So the Eling was replaced with the Mataram. The Mataram was founded by the king Sanjaya, and it will later be divided into two dynasties, which is the Sanjaya dynasty and the Sailendra dynasty, which both might be related. The Sanjaya dynasty was Shaivist, which is a kind of Hinduism, and the Sailendra dynasty was Buddhist, which is Buddhist. Yeah, and basically the Sailendra dynasty eventually allied with the Srivijaya Empire in Sumatra, and then one of the most famous things of the Mataram kingdom was the Borobudur temple, which was built kind of near here. It's near Yogyakarta. But after the construction of the Borobudur temple, there began some like tensions between the Sailendra and the Sanjaya families, ending with the Srivijaya Empire eventually conquering Java from the Shaivist leaders. The Shaivism is basically a branch of Hinduism which worships Shiva. Yeah, so the Shaivists, however, made a comeback or revival with the king Airlangga, who founded the Kahuripan kingdom. The Kahuripan kingdom was divided into two, which is Kediri and Janggala. And then Kediri absorbed Janggala and grew in power until it became one of the most powerful kingdoms in the area because Srivijaya was weakening after Indian raids. So the Kediri, actually we're gonna stop here The next clip, we're going to talk about the Kediri, the Singhasari, and the Majapahit empires. Thank you for watching. Hey guys, so now I'm in, what's this called again? Kebun Sayur Sukomakmur, which is a vegetable garden in, I don't know, honestly, in Central Java. So today we're going to talk about, so now we're going to talk about the kingdom of Kediri, Singhasari, Majapahit, and the fall of Majapahit. By the way, if you want to get up here, you have to take the motorcycle. Before we were going to, we were previously going to the, after the, what's called again? I'm forgetting this. The Nepal from Java. We drove here and then we took a motorcycle up here. And now it's very hazy. It's very cloudy. It's probably very high right now. But now we're going to talk about the actual history. So the kingdom of Kediri reached its peak of power. And after that, it was taken over by the Singhasari kingdom in 1222 after the rebellion. So the Kediri became subordinate to the Kediri, or a vassal to the Kediri. I mean to the Singhasari. The Singhasari lasted 70 years, and during the reign of the king Kertagama spread the kingdom to Sumatra, and also basically refused the Mongol envoys who demanded tribute from him. So basically, the Mongols came from the north and asked Kertagama to give them tribute, which is money basically, and money and gifts. And Kertagama refused, so the Mongols sent an army to chase him down. But before they arrived, the Kediri from before rebelled under Jaya Katwang, and then Jaya Katwang basically defeated Kertagama. Kertagama's son-in-law, which is Raden Wijaya, was sent north to destroy the rebellion. But when he came back from the north, his father-in-law was already defeated. And then when the Mongols came, Raden Wijaya allied with the Mongols to destroy the Kediri. So the Kediri was destroyed. But after that, Raden Wijaya basically betrayed the Mongols and also killed the Mongols. And then Raden Wijaya basically founded the empire of Majapahit. So after that, after he died, his son, which is Jayanegara, took over. Jayanegara was an incompetent ruler, but he was succeeded by more competent rulers who were assisted by the Prime Minister and General Gajah Mada. So basically, during the golden age of the Majapahit, which is during the reigns of Gitarja, which is I forgot the full name, and Hayam Wuruk, the Majapahit controlled most of the Malay archipelago and controlled the spice trade to the Maluku Islands. And then after that, after the death of Hayam Wuruk, the empire began to decline because of civil war, rebellions, the loss of the trade routes, and also the spread of Islam. So Islam was spread by traders to Indonesia and basically came to port cities like Tuban, Demak, and Surabaya, which began sultanates like the Demak Sultanate, which eventually conquered Majapahit. So in the next clip, we're going to talk about the later Muslim sultanates, and after that the colonial period and the Dutch. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, now I'm in Pendem in Ambarawa, the Fort Willem one, and this is like a fort from the Dutch era. Today, and now in this clip, I'm going to talk about the history of the later Muslim sultanates and the Dutch and Japanese, and also British and French and Portuguese colonization of Indonesia. So the Demak Sultanate was a sultanate that was once vassalized by the Majapahit Empire. Vassalized means that they pay like annual money or gifts to the Majapahit. But in the end, they decided to rebel, and Demak eventually grew and overpowered Majapahit and eventually destroyed the Majapahit remnants in Daha. So Demak expanded, and under the king Trenggana, reached its peak. It reached its peak. And then at this time, a man called Fatahillah came back from Mecca to the presence of the king Trenggana, and this guy was determined to drive out the Portuguese infidels. Infidel is like a heretic basically, because he is Muslim and he thinks that the Portuguese are infidels. Yes, and then and then he heard of the Portuguese Sunda alliance, so he went from Demak to Sunda Kelapa and took the city, as well as some ports in Banten. And the city of Sunda Kelapa was renamed to Jayakarta, which eventually becomes Jakarta. And but after Trenggana's reign, the Sultanate of Demak eventually weakened in power, and was replaced by sultanates like Cirebon and Surabaya and Mataram. And then the Portuguese eventually failed in the archipelago because of the failure of the alliance with Sunda, and they were eventually confined to Malacca in now modern-day Malaysia. But there is another colonial country that's about to arrive, which is the Dutch, and the explorer Cornelis de Houtman eventually discovered Java in the 15 or 1600s. Following that, the Dutch eventually started to take more and more of Java by participating in civil wars in the Mataram Sultanate and slowly gobbling up the Mataram territory until eventually Java and the rest of Indonesia and the rest of the archipelago, because Indonesia didn't really exist at the time. The idea of Indonesia didn't really exist at the time. It was theirs. Yeah. So the Dutch were here in Java to secure the trade routes with the Banda Islands, and also for the rice agriculture. So, and then they were in power in Java until the Napoleonic Wars in the early 1800s, when the French took over the Netherlands in Europe, and the French also took over Indonesia. The French then built a road from Anyer in the west to Panarukan in the east. So it's like a Trans-Java road, like that. Yeah. But the French weren't here for long, and then they were replaced by the British. And then the British exchanged it with the Dutch again. So the Dutch were back in power in Indonesia, even though it's not Indonesia yet. And now at that time, Java wasn't that like populated as it is today. But during the colonial period, its population skyrocketed because of agricultural techniques and the lack of civil wars, and also new technology and transportation. And during the 1800s also, there was the Java War, when some of the local people, led by people like Diponegoro, did try to fight against the Dutch, but failed. And then soon in the World Wars, the Japanese eventually came. They went from Japan, then going down through China, then to Indochina, which is Vietnam and Laos and that stuff, and then through British Malaya, which is Malaysia, Singapore, and eventually reaching Java. And the Japanese took Java, and they had it for maybe 3 or 4 years before Indonesia gained independence. We're gonna talk about the independence period in the next clip. Okay, so now I'm in Brebes near Tegal, and it is in a rest stop from in the way to Jakarta. And basically it's like a rest stop, it's like a market, there's some shops here, and there's this old structure in here. So we're already going home, and we couldn't find a place to record the last clip in Magelang, so we'll do it here, which is in the way back home. So in this clip, I'm going to talk about the history of Java after independence, which is after 1945. So Indonesia gained independence in 1945 after the Japanese surrender in World War II, and after that, and the independence movement was actually based in Java, specifically Jakarta, and basically the proclamation was also spoken out in Jakarta, which is in Java. When Indonesia became independent, the capital was in Jakarta, which is in the northern coast of Java in the west side, in the marshy plain area. And there were 3 provinces in Java only, which is Java Barat, Java Tengah, and Java Timur, which is East Central and West Central and East Java respectively. Now there are 6 provinces, which is including Banten, DKI Jakarta, and DI Yogyakarta. After some of the provinces were basically like split up all of it. So Java has experienced quite a lot of growth since the independence movement, and including more building construction and advancement and stuff like that. And now also faces some challenges. For example, the city of Jakarta is kind of sinking, and also other things. An example of an advancement in Jakarta in the recent years would be the construction of the train from the high-speed train from Jakarta to Bandung, which is the Wush train, which is that one, yeah. So that's the history of Java. That's a brief history of Java. I guess I missed some things in the modern era and also the ancient times. But that's basically an overview of the history of the island and a tour throughout Central Java. Thank you for watching.